That's Montana.
On this episode of That's Montana, we headed east to Sidney, county seat of Richland County, but located in a geographic area known as MonDak, because it combines Montana and North Dakota as far as agriculture is concerned. They have an annual get-together over there called MonDak Ag Days, and we're going to introduce you to some of the folks that were the originators of that event and talk about how they put it together on some cold winter days. We'll first introduce you to a fellow named Russ Wells. Russ is a retired newspaperman and an entrepreneur. And every once in a while during the course of this episode, you're going to hear some tall tales from cowboy poet Baxter Black. Russ, the old mercantile in downtown Sidney, what a change. Tell us about the history of this ag event that happens in Sidney.
They started an event where agricultural people got together and did some tours out in the country, and then had a big banquet because there was a lot of feeding of cattle and sheep in the area. And so they held this event. And about 20 years ago, I went to the committee and suggested that maybe we could have a trade show along with it. And so that first year we had it in what's now Finnegans Furniture out here. And this year, for the very first time, we're at the new multipurpose building at the fairgrounds, which is quite an improvement in the whole event because it can hold it all in one location and making an event out of it and bringing in machinery and the different things that occur at the trade show. And then the other portion of Ag Days, of course, is the educational portion. It's a big event now with getting it in that new facility, and it'll just continue to grow and grow. And it's always going to be cold, but sometimes the rural people need an excuse to come to town, get out of the feedlot for a few hours.
Yeah, and warm up. Well, the hospitality has been extraordinary for us when we've been here. And of course, last night you had #1 guy as far as cowboy poetry. A lot of people feel Baxter Black, even though he's not a Montanan. We have to jig him a little bit about that, but it was sure a fun event.
I can tell you what we all have in common. We are of the land. The land everybody's trying to save. We are of the earth. We're of the earth from the glimmer to the grave. We're the plankton in the ocean. We're the grass upon the plain. We're the lichen on the tundra. We're the clevis in the chain. You will find us on the outskirts, coaxing bounty from the ground, with our watchful eye cast skyward, well beyond the lights of town. Dust to dust we are committed to the earth in which we stand. We are farmers by our birthright. We're the stewards of the land. For there are those who sit in towers who pretend to know what's best. They pontificate and dabble, and they bray loudly, and they protest that a peasant can't be trusted with the land to which he's bred, and they rail with a curtain with the purpose of a person who's well fed. We have labored through the ages for these power-hungry kings. We have fueled the wars of nations with their arrows and their slings. We have fed the teeming masses with our fish and loaves of bread, so the poor would sit and listen to the words the prophets said. Mother Earth can be forgiving when in ignorance we err, but she can die of good intentions. She needs someone who will care, not with platitudes of poets, counting blood and sweat and toil, but the daily care of someone with their hand upon the soil. And the bullets become ballots, and the rulers change their names. They will still march on their bellies. So our job remains the same. For the bureaucrats and the battleships and the Einsteins and the choirs would spend their life behind the plow if no one fed their fires. And that's what we do, and I am proud to be a part of it.
Just a relaxing night for it's designed for the rural people. The city people can come, but we want the rural people
well,
to show up.
well,
It's kind of a tribute to them.
Well, Russ, I want to thank you for the hospitality and the insight and all your dedicated work to make that ag show a community event for this part of Montana.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And that's Montana. We'll be right back. The next fellow you're going to hear from is Red Lovick. Red is an old friend and a county extension agent, retired now, but was very instrumental in putting together Ag Days and has a great history to tell about the event and that MonDak area. Red, thanks for your time today. Let's back up and give me a definition. We're in eastern Montana in an area called MonDak. Give us a geographic definition of what that is before we talk about the show.
Okay, MonDak, I would say it's probably 3 or 4 counties in eastern Montana, probably Sheridan, Roosevelt, Richland, part of Dawson. Then you go on the other side, you have Golden Valley, McKinsey, and Williams. But that's kind of the area we talk about when we talk about the MonDak area. We try to coordinate a lot of activities between the 2 states and the multiple counties.
So that border disappears basically, or at least we hope it does, huh?
Well, I never knew there was one there,
Oh.
or never did know where it was at.
So the idea comes to maybe put together some educational forums, some demonstrations and the like. Take us back to day one. Where'd the idea come for this program that we're seeing today?
Holly Sugar and the bankers and the Northern Pacific Railroad and the Extension Service were the big promoters and pushers of a feeder tour. So Holly had a big feed yard at their plant where they used beet pulp and stuff to, as a byproduct that they need to get rid of. So those individuals promoted the feeding of cattle and sheep in this area. And of course the railroads, they wanted to ship the sheep in, and they'd also ship them back out, so that was where they would get their money from. And the bankers would, of course, loan the money, so that's where they'd get their interest in. So everybody had an interest in this, and they were trying to get the farmers and ranchers more involved in this. So that's kind of where it started, and they do 1 year in Sidney area, and then next year they go to Fairview and do the thing in Fairview area. And this was got to be known as the Lower Yellowstone Valley Feeders Tour. In the early 50s, the Fairview group decided they wanted one every year also, so they split off, and that was called the Fairview Feeder Tour. And they also had, at that time, what they called a Crops and Soils Day, which they featured educational topics on crops and soils. Basically, same group of people were doing the Lower Yellowstone Valley Feeder Tour, which was one day, and the Crops and Soils Day, which was another day. So we decided, what the heck, let's put them together back to back. And then we decided, well, okay, so as long as they're together, let's give them a new name. So we gave them a new name called Richland County Ag Days. And that we went for 4 or 5 years, and then we changed it to MonDak Ag Days.
Well, Red, I want to thank you for taking and sharing some time with us and giving us a little history and perspective of where this annual event in the dead of winter takes place in Sidney, Montana.
It's my enjoyment.
Thank you.
Bet.
You bet. And that's Montana. We'll be right back. Next, we're going to introduce you to Jerry Bergman. Jerry is head of the USDA Research Center that they have at Sidney, and it works in cooperation with the Extension Service, Montana State University extension agencies that they have around the state of Montana. Pretty insightful fella. Jerry, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to us here at the MonDak Ag Days get-together and your involvement in it. What do you see it accomplishing as far as the get-together?
It's a great time for us to be able to meet with ag producers and agribusinesses to display the knowledge that we have in ag research, as well as see what the industry is doing for agriculture.
What are some of the things that you're working on currently?
Well, of course, variety testing is always of interest to the growers, but we do a lot on management, production practices for irrigated and dryland crops, weed control, soil fertility, irrigation efficiency, and new methods of growing crops and cropping systems. We used to be the greatest area of black fallow. Since 1990, this region, we reduced fallow 2 million acres and diversified crops Before it was small grains, now we're growing 25 different crops in the region.
Jerry, we're in some tough economic times, but we still have to eat and we still have to have jobs. How is the economic situation affecting you and agriculture?
Well, we are getting budget cuts in the experiment station that are negatively impacting our research capabilities, and with our investment in improving ag receipts and generating revenue in the state, I think it's a mistake to cut ag research dollars, and I'd like to see those restored.
Jerry, your facility's been here quite a while and seen a lot of changes down through the years. Give us a little recap of the history of your area.
Well, the research station was started in 1949, and we are now upgrading the facility that was built in 1954 to a modern research lab, office, greenhouse facility. This is something we've waited for 30 years, and we're getting a $2.6 million facility that will be completed in March, and we'll have our grand opening on field day, July 26th.
Well, we'll come back and visit with you.
Right,
at that
we'd love
time
to
then,
have you
so
then.
we can let people see what has changed over time
Right.
in the Sidney area. So, Jerry, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
If wheat gets up to $7, I'll hoard it. Yes, sirree. Till the grain bin's overflowing, or it goes back down to 3. There's too much riding on it to sell it right away. Banker might call in my note. They're funny that way. Long as things are nip and tuck, they'll let the balance ride. Just pay the interest on it and they'll be satisfied. They don't like sudden changes. Bankers, that is, conservatives. You see, they like things that they can count on, like hail and CRP. And if you look too prosperous, or friends think that you are, they'll try and sell you something that you've lived without so far, like asphalt on the driveway, or fancy silverware, or a double-jointed tractor. Of course, the preacher gets his share. No, there ain't no use me getting rich. Knowing me, I'd spend it and borrow more. Land and stock, there's plenty who would lend it. I'm better off just getting by and staying where I sit, because the more that I make farming, the more I go in debt. So if wheat gets up to 7, I could sell it on the board, but I won't, because making money is one thing I can't afford. It's a different kind of logic that allows a man to boast when the richest farmer farming is the one who owes the most.
A long time ago in a place far, far away, I got introduced to the voice of a guy who claimed to be a veterinarian, but was a comic as far as the cowboy West is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Baxter Black. This program is about Montana folks. Now, you're not from Montana, but we figure we've got to adopt you, or...
Well, how many days do I have to, how many programs do I have to do in Montana?
I don't know, but you've done a bunch.
I'm just guessing. Now, this is just a guess. But I would say easily 50 to 70.
I think that qualifies. Do you want to honorize yourself somehow being a Montana citizen?
Well, I think you have to earn it.
Should we?
You know, there's too many people can just move here and buy a place and say, I'm a Montanan.
Oh.
You know?
Well, we're in Sidney. You did the show here. Pruitt's Cow, selling Pruitt's Cow. Take us back. 1981, I believe you said.
It was.
That was.
30 years ago this week.
And you really weren't in the cowboy poetry business then, were you?
I was a veterinarian, and I was doing had 2 jobs for this veterinary products company. And I'd taken the job after I left Idaho, and it only lasted a couple of years. But in that window, I put on producer meetings, and that means I would go and I'd talk about a disease du jour, and then the salesman would talk about it. We'd buy everyone dinner and have a party. But my programs were more entertaining than informative. So I became popular. So people started calling, and I think that was one of those deals. I was legitimately here as a veterinarian, for that company to give a talk on diseases. But wherever there are cattle people, you know, I'm telling them stories, and I get the serious part done, but I told the jokes or the poems, and that's when I met Rod. And the whole group of those people that were here, I mean, there's still, all you had to do was look out in that audience tonight. Those people are solid as rocks.
Staying on the second floor of the Lalonde Hotel, and I walked upstairs, and I sat down and I wrote this poem. It didn't take long, I can remember that. I'm not bragging, because usually it takes a long time. And it has made me famous, and now when I'm in Sydney, I tell them, you know, I've been to Sydney. I've been telling people that for 30 years. You know where Sydney is? Sure, I've been there. I know Rod Pruitt. Now, a lot of you guys may think, because you're younger than he and I, that he built his empire by, you know, making the right decision and having a lot of counseling and really investing his money well. Well, that's all. The truth is, he started out, and he'd get his old truck, had the wooden stock racks on the back. He'd jump a horse in the back of it, I remember. And he would just drive up and down the country, down these long roads. And he'd go by one of your places, and he'd go by, and there'd be these old wore-out cows that you guys had just finished with. And he'd buy these darlings, and he'd pick them up, and he'd take them back to the sale barn. He'd put them in the back there and feed them for 2 or 3 weeks. And then take them up good on water. Try and slip them through the sale. And they weren't always what you'd call show cows, were they? Sometimes he had to get down in the ring with that old darling to keep her good side of the corral. He'd get down there and he'd look up and the auctioneer, and the auctioneer would begin. Hey, but I run, sir, step up and sell this fine cow. I've got a $5 bill on the cow. Good cow, who'll bid 10? Walking on 3, milking on 2. You ain't got 10? Well, I ain't through, because I'll take 8. Did you ate this cow's great, 1 big foot, 1 bad ear? What do you care if she can't hear? Nothing Jordan, we can't fix. You won't give 8, I'll take 6. 6 big bills, come on, try. She don't eat with 1 good eye. What do you mean she ain't alive? See her breathing? I'll take 5. Come on, boys, you make me sore. Call the vet. I'll take 4. 4 ain't much, she's just a pup. Come on, Pruitt, get her up. Come on, boys, nothing free. Get the tractor. I'll take 3. 3 is all I'm asking now. Surely someone needs this cow. You may think that I'm all through. There's still a chance. I'll take 2. Pruitt, get her propped up straight. Lean her up against the gate. Find replacement Pleasant Prairie. Pay no mind to that bad leg. She's a dandy. Not too old. Tits will grow back, so I'm told. Rigor mortis, no just 10. Someone give me 50 cents. Anybody give a dime? Hurry up, there ain't much time. Go on, boys, use your head. Dang it, Pruitt, now she's dead.
So what inspires you?
Those people sitting right there. They send me endless stories. I tell stories about wrecks, horse wrecks, cow wrecks, sheep wrecks, dog wrecks, financial wrecks, Tyrannosaurus wrecks. You can't find a wreck that they can't make a story out of. All that stuff couldn't happen to me, just one guy, you know. You couldn't live that long. So they tell me their stories, and I stand up there and tell them back to them.
Well, Baxter, I sure want to thank you for taking the time to kind of chat with us on the sidebar here.
Montana is one of the few places I have not lived in the West. But I come here so often. It's the people. You know, you have every state is different, and you guys are unique. You're a cowboy and you're farmer, and that works for me a lot of times. And you're hardy folk. You know, I like that. There's not a lot of whining coming out of here.
What kind of legacy do you hope shows up?
For Montana?
No, for you when you
I don't
travel the Great Divide.
I'm not an introspective person.
Oh.
Give them their money's worth. That's my job. It's not whether I made money, it's that they get their money's worth. Hey,
Baxter,
pleasure
always
to
a
see
pleasure.
you.
You bet. You take care, and thank you for...
Happy trails to you.
Somebody once said very wisely that Baxter Black could raise the dead and make them laugh. Well, I think after we've seen him in action, we would all agree with that. Well, this puts a wrap on this episode of That's Montana. We hope you enjoyed the trip to Sidney, the county seat of Richland County, and a part of that turf called MonDak. We'll be back to visit those folks, but it's going to have to be a little bit warmer than this time around. And don't forget, you can visit us on our website at www.thatsmontana.com and become a friend on Facebook. We'll see you next Sunday on That's Montana.